You have my body, Ethan, but you'll never have my heart. My new wife, Catherine Sterling, lay stiffly on the bed, her voice a cold declaration on our wedding night. Her face, undeniably beautiful, was etched with humiliation and defiance. I just smiled. Walking over, I reached out and gently lifted her chin, my tone a devil-may-care drawl. I only need your body, sweetheart. What good the heart to me? You bastard, she spat, her eyes welling up. Seeing her like this, a thrill ran through me. This one-year contract marriage was going to be far more entertaining than I'd anticipated. Sign it. Kate flung a document from the nightstand. It landed on the comforter in front of me with a soft thud, lacking force, but heavy with insult. I picked it up, the dim glow of the bedside lamp illuminating the bold title, Marriage Agreement. The contents were standard and ruthlessly strict. First, separate bedrooms. No physical contact allowed, except for absolutely necessary public appearances. Second, we were to present ourselves as a loving couple to family and outsiders, preserving the Sterling family's reputation. Third, no interference in each other's private lives, including but not limited to friendships, work, and entertainment. Fourth, and most crucially, after 1 year, once the Sterling Group's crisis was resolved, both parties would agree to a divorce, and a husband would voluntarily relinquish any claim to marital assets. I skimmed it, a slow grin spreading across my face. This woman really thought she was the tragic heroine of some drama. She assumed I was after her family's money, desperate to become her nominal husband. What, too scared to sign? Kate noticed my inaction, a new layer of sarcasm dripping from her voice. Afraid of losing everything after a year? I ignored her, flipping directly to the last page. I scrawled my signature, Ethan Cole, with a flourish, then tossed the agreement back onto the bed. With a sigh, I stretched out, taking up most of the mattress. What are you doing? Rule number 1, separate bedrooms. She practically shrieked, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, scrambling to sit up, clutching the agreement. I yawned, propping my head on my arm. This is the master bedroom, your room. I have no idea where the guest room is. I'm sleeping here tonight, or maybe the couch. Tomorrow, point me to the guest room, and I promise I won't step foot in here again. My tone was utterly casual, as if discussing the weather. Kate's chest rose and fell dramatically, clearly furious at my blatant disregard for her rules. She'd probably never encountered someone who played so completely outside her expectations. And for a moment, she seemed speechless. Her usual icy demeanor and sharp business acumen, honed for corporate rivals, seemed to hit a brick wall when it came to me. She stammered for a long moment, then deflated, grabbing the comforter and turning her back to me, her rigid posture expressing her fury and defiance. I chuckled softly at her stiff back. This marriage was nothing more than a transaction. She needed my presence to stabilize the Sterling Group's wavering shareholders amidst their company crisis. As for me, I was simply fulfilling a promise to an old friend. We were supposed to coexist, 2 ships passing in the night. But it seemed this particular night might not be so quiet after all. The night was still, and I could hear her deliberately suppressed, yet still ragged, breathing. After a while, the sound softened. I turned my head, seeing her tight grip on the comforter finally relax. She was exhausted, poor thing. Carrying the weight of a crumbling empire, she was stretched taut. I quietly got up, retrieved the agreement she'd discarded, and walked to the sofa. It was surprisingly comfortable. One night wouldn't hurt. Before lying down, I glanced back at the small, huddled form on the bed. In the dark, her silhouette looked strangely fragile. Good night, CEO Sterling, I thought, closing my eyes. The next morning, I was woken by the sharp click-clack of high heels. Opening my eyes, I saw an impeccably dressed woman standing in the living room, appraising me with the critical gaze of someone inspecting faulty merchandise. Beside her stood a bleary-eyed young man, a sneer plastered on his face. This must be my mother-in-law, Patricia Sterling, and her spoiled son, Kevin Sterling. Mom, what are you doing here? Kate's voice came from the bedroom. She emerged wearing a crisp business suit, her hair pulled back flawlessly, the Ice Queen CEO persona fully restored. Patty ignored her, striding directly toward me, her chin held high. You must be Ethan Cole. I sat up on the sofa, stretching. I was still in yesterday's shorts and t-shirt, my hair a mess. I nodded. Morning, Mrs. Sterling. Who are you calling Mrs. Sterling? Patty's brow furrowed so deeply it looked like it could crack walnuts. Let me tell you, the Sterling family doesn't tolerate freeloaders. Now that you've married into this family, you'll follow our rules. Don't think for a second that marrying Kate means you've hit the jackpot and can just sit back and do nothing. She rattled off her accusations like a machine gun, and Kevin piped up. Seriously, Kate, where did you dig this guy up? He looks like a homeless man. He's an embarrassment to our family. I didn't get angry. Instead, I just smiled. I stood, stretched, then walked straight to the open-plan kitchen and peered into the fridge. Well stocked. What kind of attitude is that? Patty shrieked, her voice rising an octave, infuriated that I was completely ignoring her. Without turning, I took out eggs and bacon, expertly lit the stove, heated the pan, and poured in oil. The actions flowed seamlessly. Soon, the tantalizing aroma of sizzling bacon filled the kitchen. Kate walked up beside me, lowering her voice. Ethan, watch yourself. Ich glänzte her. She had light makeup on today, her lips a soft pink, not as pale as last night. I plated the sunny-side-up eggs and bacon, toasted 2 slices of bread, poured myself a glass of orange juice, then sauntered over to the dining table and sat down. Delicious. I mumbled, taking a large bite of toast, my eyes half closed in satisfaction. Patty and Kevin stared, dumbfounded. They'd probably never encountered such an audacious son-in-law. You only cook for yourself. Patty pointed at me, her finger trembling. I looked up, still chewing. Oh, this? Yeah, I made it. If you want something, you can order takeout. You know how to use Uber Eats, right? Puffed. Kevin spewed a mouthful of water. Patty's face went from white to red, then red to green, before she clutched her chest, looking like she was about to have a heart attack. Mom! Kate rushed to support her, then shot me a venomous glare, as if to say, just you wait. I shrugged and continued demolishing my breakfast. With snobs like them, the more humble you are, the more they'll walk all over you. But if you live more freely than they do, they start to doubt themselves. Breakfast concluded in this bizarre, chaotic atmosphere. Patty, fuming, was eventually coaxed and led away by Kate. Before leaving, she cast a gaze at me that promised future retribution. Kate returned after seeing them off, standing in the entryway, looking at me coldly. Ethan Cole, what exactly are you trying to achieve? What good does it do you to deliberately provoke my mother? I wiped my mouth with a napkin, stood, and walked toward her. She was a head shorter than me, and I could clearly see the suppressed anger in her eyes. I'm just being myself. I spread my hands, feigning innocence. Your mom, however, decided to interrupt my morning and launch a personal attack. I'd call that self-defense. And I interrupted, leaning in close, my voice a low murmur meant only for her ears. You'd better remind them to be polite to me. Otherwise, I can't guarantee I'll be so gentle next time. My breath brushed her earlobe. She flinched, her ears visibly reddening. She quickly stepped back, putting distance between us, her eyes filled with wariness and exasperation. Stay away from me. Seeing her reaction put me in a great mood. I whistled a tune and headed back to the sofa, leaving Kate standing there, her expression shifting wildly. She was probably wondering why I, a seemingly useless husband, was so utterly fearless. Good. The game had only just begun. The next few days passed in blissful comfort. Kate left early and returned late, constantly swamped with work. Patty and Kevin hadn't shown their faces again, presumably still reeling from my earlier show of force. I slept until I woke naturally, made myself food, worked out, or simply lounged on the sofa, scrolling through financial news on my tablet. Occasionally, I'd switch to an encrypted interface to handle some private business. If Kate knew about these private affairs, she'd probably fall out of her chair. She thought I was just some idle nobody, unaware that the very source of her company's recent headaches, Ascendant Holdings, the entity stirring up chaos in the capital markets and relentlessly targeting the Sterling Group, was to me merely an ant I could crush with a flick of my wrist. That evening, Kate returned particularly late, her face unusually grim. The moment she stepped inside, she kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the sofa, too exhausted to even take off her coat. I brought her a glass of warm water from the kitchen. She glanced at me, her expression complex, but ultimately took the glass, mumbling a thank you. Company trouble? I asked, feigning ignorance. She took a sip of water, then, as if making a difficult decision, spoke. The Sterling Group's cash flow is about to collapse. Our biggest competitor, Ascendant Holdings, has been maliciously acquiring our shares. Their young executive, Brandon Lee, announced at the board meeting today that he'll take over Sterling within 3 days. A subtle tremor ran through her voice. Brandon Lee. The name rang a bell. He was apparently one of Kate's obsessive former suitors, who, rejected, had turned his love into hate, determined to ruin Sterling Group out of spite. A typical idiot. The old guard on the board. They're all jumping ship, siding with Brandon Lee. Now, only an investment from Gold Peak Capital can save us. She rubbed her temples, her face etched with weariness. Gold Peak Capital, the city's largest investment firm, its owner a mystery. There's a business gala the day after tomorrow. Mr. Henderson from Gold Peak Capital will be there. It's our last chance. Kate looked at me, a hint of plea in her eyes. Ethan, could you come with me? She probably feared she couldn't handle the situation alone and needed a nominal husband for appearances. Even if, in her eyes, this husband was useless. Sure, I readily agreed. What's the going rate for a +1? She froze, then let out a short, bitter laugh. Ethan Cole, is there anything in your brain besides money? Of course, I replied, poker-faced. Like, what's for dinner tonight? Kate was utterly speechless. She probably thought debating with me was like talking to a brick wall. She stood up, wearily heading to her bedroom, tossing over her shoulder before closing the door. Whatever you want. I watched her retreating back and shook my head. Foolish woman, your biggest backer is sitting right in front of you, and you're busy begging others. Still, it's more fun to play the game slowly. I pulled out my phone and sent a text. Give me everything on Ascendant Holdings. All data within 10 minutes. 3 minutes later, my phone vibrated. A disturbingly detailed dossier arrived, including all of Ascendant Holdings' illicit dealings and the dirt on the Lee family. I scanned it, a cold smirk playing on my lips. Brandon Lee, huh? I hope you have a blast at the gala the day after tomorrow. On the day of the business gala, Kate had a bespoke suit ready for me. Don't embarrass me, she warned, her face unsmiling as she adjusted my tie. Her fingers were cool, and an accidental brush against my neck sent a shiver down my spine. I caught the faint, pleasant scent of her perfume. Relax, ima pro, ivinket. She rolled her eyes and headed downstairs first. The gala was held in the top-floor ballroom of a 5-star hotel downtown. It was a lavish affair, filled with designer clothes, clinking glasses, and the opulent display of high society. Kate's appearance immediately drew glances. She wore a silver evening gown that made her already fair skin even more radiant, a vision of an elegant queen. I walked beside her, an unassuming knight. Well, if it isn't CEO Sterling? What? Your company's about to go under, and you still have time for galas. A flippant voice cut through the air. I followed the sound. A slick-haired young man with an obnoxious smirk approached, a drink in hand, his gaze sweeping over Kate with undisguised avarice and malice. It was Brandon Lee. Kate's face instantly turned cold. Mr. Lee, my company is none of your concern. Don't be so stubborn. Brandon Lee laughed, his voice low enough to be discreet, yet loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. I hear Sterling Group's stock has been plummeting for days, hasn't it? The old fogies on your board are all lining up for me to take over. When that happens, will you, CEO Sterling, have to get on your knees and beg me before I even consider leaving you a position? His words were utterly humiliating. People around us exchanged curious glances, some whispering. Kate's body trembled slightly. She gripped her clutch bag so tightly her knuckles were white, but she still held her back ramrod straight, like an unyielding pine. Brandon Lee, don't push it too far. Too far? I've got more where that came from. Brandon Lee's gaze fell on me, scrutinizing me from head to toe before he scoffed. And this must be your new husband, huh? Heard he's a penniless pretty boy? Kate Sterling, you really are desperate. You'd rather find a kept man like him than come to me. He shifted his aggression to me, stepping closer, pointing his glass at my nose. Hey, pretty boy, how's life as a kept man? Pretty sweet, huh? All eyes in the room instantly turned to me. Kate shot me a nervous glance, probably afraid I, an ordinary man, would be intimidated by the scene, or worse, impulsively lash out at Brandon Lee. I wasn't intimidated, nor did I feel impulsive. I just felt a little hungry. I calmly took a plate of exquisite desserts from a nearby cart and began eating, oblivious to the stares. My actions stunned everyone, including Brandon Lee. He'd likely never seen anyone with the appetite to eat in such a situation. You, what the hell are you doing? Brandon Lee's face turned beet red. He felt his authority challenged. I swallowed the last bite of tiramisu, dabbed my mouth with a napkin, then looked up, meeting his gaze calmly. I was just thinking about something. What something? Brandon Lee asked instinctively. I smiled faintly, then spoke slowly, my voice quiet but clearly audible in our corner of the room. Your father calls me Mr. Cole, with respect. Who do you think you are, barking at me like a stray dog? A hush fell over the room. Everyone stared at me, as if I were insane. Kate, too, was wide-eyed. She tugged at my sleeve, silently urging me to be quiet. Brandon Lee froze for 3 seconds, then burst into exaggerated laughter. Ah, what did I just hear? My dad calls him Mr. Cole. Buddy, did you forget to take your meds this morning? Do you even know who my dad is? The CEO of Ascendant Holdings. He laughed so hard he bent over, tears streaming from his eyes. The surrounding crowd joined in with muffled snickers. In their eyes, I was an ignorant fool, spouting nonsense to look tough in front of a beautiful woman. I didn't laugh. I simply watched him, a hint of pity in my eyes. Just then, a spirited elderly gentleman in a traditional silk jacket, surrounded by an entourage, quickly approached us. Mr. Henderson. Good evening, Mr. Henderson. Everyone around us greeted him respectfully. It was David Henderson, the head of Gold Peak Capital and the city's wealthiest man. Brandon Lee immediately dropped his smile, rushing forward obsequiously. Mr. Henderson, sir, good evening. I'm Brandon Lee from Ascendant Holdings. Here's my card. However, David Henderson didn't even glance at him. He simply waved him aside and walked directly up to me. Then, to the shock of everyone present, he bowed deeply, almost 90 degrees. Mr. Cole, sir, why didn't you inform us of your arrival? I would have met you at the door. My sincerest apologies for not giving you a proper welcome. David Henderson's voice was filled with trepidation. In that instant, the air in the entire ballroom seemed to freeze. Brandon Lee's smile became a rigid mask, his mouth agape enough to fit an egg. Those who had been snickering moments ago fell silent, staring at me in bewildered horror. Kate looked at me with an expression of utter disbelief. Her small hand was still gripping my sleeve, her fingertips white from the pressure. I patted her hand, signaling her to relax. Then I looked at David Henderson and spoke mildly. I'm here with my wife for the gala. You, however, need to have a word with your event security. Letting just any riffraff in here is giving me a headache. My gaze subtly flickered towards Brandon Lee. David Henderson was a shrewd man. He instantly understood. His face darkened, and he turned to glare at Brandon Lee, his voice sharp. What is the meaning of this? Brandon Lee's knees buckled. He couldn't fathom how this man he dismissed as a kept man could be someone even David Henderson treated with such deference. Mr. Henderson, I didn't know he was your... Smack! A loud slap cut Brandon Lee off. A middle-aged man rushed over, panting, his face pale with terror. It was Richard Lee, the CEO of Ascendant Holdings and Brandon's father. He had clearly received a frantic call from David Henderson and had rushed over as quickly as possible. Richard Lee slapped his son, not even daring to look at him, then scurried over to me, almost collapsing to his knees. Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry. I was blind. I failed as a father. Please, in your great generosity, forgive us this one time. I looked at him, expressionless. I didn't speak. I simply turned to David Henderson and said, Ascendant Holdings. I don't want to see it on the market after opening bell tomorrow. As my words hung in the air, Richard Lee slumped to the ground with a soft thud, his face ashen. On the way home, the atmosphere in the car was stifling. Kate drove, staring straight ahead, but her tight grip on the steering wheel and the occasional glances she shot me in the rearview mirror, a mixture of shock, confusion, and scrutiny, betrayed her inner turmoil. I leaned back in the passenger seat, eyes closed, resting, as if I hadn't just, with a single sentence, decided the fate of $1 billion corporation at the gala. You. She finally broke the silence, her voice dry. Who exactly are you? I opened my eyes and turned to look at her. Streetlights flashed past, casting fleeting shadows on her delicate profile. A mischievous impulse stirred within me. I reverted to my usual playful, cocky demeanor and grinned at her. Your husband. She choked, taking a deep breath, clearly trying to steady her voice. Ethan Cole, I'm not kidding. Why was David Henderson so afraid of you? Richard Lee. Ascendant Holdings. Oh, that. I said dismissively. David Henderson no us me a favor. As for Ascendant Holdings, I guess they just crossed the wrong person. I made it all sound utterly trivial, as if I'd simply helped a neighbor chase away a noisy, stray dog. Kate clearly didn't believe me. She pressed her lips together, saying nothing more. She was a smart woman. She knew I wouldn't tell her, and further questions would be pointless. But the seed of doubt had been planted in her mind. She was starting to realize that I, the husband she'd considered a mere transaction and shield, was far from the simple man she'd imagined. I was like an iceberg. She'd only ever seen the tip floating above the surface. The car pulled into the gated community and stopped in the garage. After getting out, she walked ahead and I followed. Her heels clicked sharply on the pavement, like a drumbeat echoing her unsettled thoughts. Inside the house, she changed her shoes. Instead of going straight to her bedroom, as usual, she stood in the living room, her back to me. You. She started to speak again. I walked up behind her, leaning in close, whispering in her ear, what suddenly interested in me now. My voice held a hint of amusement and teasing. Didn't you say you only wanted my body, not my heart? Her body instantly stiffened, and her ears flushed crimson again. She whirled around, intending to say something, but swallowed her words when her gaze met my knowing, half-smiling eyes. Finally, she practically fled into her bedroom, slamming the door shut. I leaned against the wall, listening to the faint sound from within the room, the curve of my smile widening. Catherine Sterling, how long can that proud heart of yours hold out? I was starting to look forward to it. The next day, the entire financial world of Viridian City was rocked. Ascendant Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, faced an unprecedented assault after the market opened. Countless mysterious, massive sell orders flooded in from all directions, like a financial tsunami, instantly slamming Ascendant's stock price to the trading limit. For the entire day, no matter how the Lee family struggled, no matter how much capital they deployed to protect the stock, the price remained firmly pinned to the floor, unmoving. In a single day, Ascendant Holdings' market value evaporated by over $10 billion. Everyone knew it. Ascendant Holdings was finished. They had offended a powerful force, and that force, with just a flick of a finger, could make them disappear. That afternoon, a spectacle unfolded outside the Sterling Group building. Richard and Brandon Lee, father and son, knelt at the company's main entrance, wailing and pleading with Kate, begging her to show mercy, begging her to intercede with Mr. Cole. Kate stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her executive office, looking down at the two disheveled figures, her hands and feet ice cold. Only then did she truly understand the immense weight of the words Ethan had spoken at the gala last night. It wasn't a joke, nor was it an angry retort. It was a judgment. Her hand trembling, she dialed my number. Hello. My voice sounded lazy, with the clatter of a spatula against a pan audible in the background. Ascendant Holdings, was that you? She asked, her voice shaking. Oh, that. I lowered the flame on the stove, answering casually. Just tidied up some trash so it wouldn't bother you. A long silence followed on the other end. I could picture her utterly astonished expression at that moment. Right? I said, as if remembering something. Do you want pot roast or baked salmon tonight? I just had a good wild salmon. The terrifying power to arbitrarily decide life and death, juxtaposed with the mundane choice of dinner, created an absurd contrast that profoundly impacted Kate's perception. She felt as if she were dreaming. Pot roast, she finally managed to squeeze out after a long pause, then abruptly hung up. I put down my phone, smiled, and continued flipping the salmon. Fish, like hearts, needs to be slowly cooked to truly savor the flavor. From that day on, The Sterling family's attitude toward me underwent a dramatic 180-degree reversal. First was my mother-in-law, Patty Sterling. She arrived with bags full of premium groceries, her face plastered with an obsequious smile, calling me my dear son-in-law repeatedly, as if I were her long-lost child. She no longer made sarcastic remarks. Instead, she personally cooked for me, preparing a variety of delicious meals, showering me with concern and warmth. Then came my brother-in-law, Kevin Sterling. He stopped calling me hey or that guy, instead incessantly calling me brother-in-law, brother-in-law. His eyes were filled with adoration and awe, as if he were moments away from bowing down to me. I accepted their change without question, enjoying the attention. I ate Patty's cooking without fail, and afterward, I'd offer a few critiques like this soup is too salty or the fish is overcooked. She'd fume internally but had to force a smile and say, I'll do better next time. When Kevin asked me for the secret to success, I told him to copy Das Kapital 100 times. He actually believed me and went home to diligently transcribe it. I turned the Sterling household upside down, yet they had to treat me like royalty. Kate witnessed all of this. She didn't say much, but the look in her eyes grew more complex each day. She started observing me discreetly. She noticed that despite my apparent laziness, I was actually quite disciplined. I'd go for a morning run, then make a gourmet breakfast. During the day, I'd read books, mostly philosophy and history that she found hard to follow. In the afternoons, I'd tidy the house meticulously, even folding and hanging up her jacket if she left it on the sofa. She also discovered that my cooking was genuinely delicious, more to her taste than any Michelin-starred restaurant she'd ever visited. She began to get used to coming home from work each day and being greeted by the aroma of dinner wafting from the kitchen. She began to get used to listening to me tell interesting stories from around the world during meals. She began to get used to shedding all her defenses and pretenses in front of me, becoming a simple girl who would smile at a good meal. This feeling was unfamiliar, but also very comforting. One evening, she worked late. When she finally got home, she found me asleep on the sofa, covered with a light blanket. On the coffee table sat a bowl of soup, kept warm under a lid. She walked over and gently touched the bowl. It was still warm. In that moment, something within her, a hardened part of her heart, seemed to quietly crack open. She stood there, gazing at my sleeping profile for a very long time. The turning point came on a Saturday afternoon. Kate was tidying up old belongings at home when she stumbled upon an old photo album. When she turned to one particular page, she froze. It was a yellowed, old photograph. In the picture, a simply dressed young man and a refined, middle-aged man stood side by side in front of University Gate, smiling brightly. The middle-aged man was her father, Dr. Sterling, who had passed away years ago, and the fresh-faced young man, with stars in his eyes, was unmistakably Ethan Cole. Kate grabbed the photo and rushed into my study, where I was reading, slamming the picture onto my desk. What is this? Why do you have a photo with my dad? Her voice trembled with emotion. I looked at the photo, my gaze softening. Professor Sterling in the picture still looked so gentle and scholarly. I was silent for a moment before I slowly began to speak, recounting a long-buried past. Professor Sterling was my mentor. I had grown up in an orphanage, naturally gifted but solitary and rebellious. It was Dr. Sterling, then a professor at Viridian City University, who discovered me and sponsored my education through college and graduate school. He didn't just give me money. He was a lighthouse in my darkest, most uncertain times, guiding my path. He taught me knowledge, principles, and how to become someone useful to society. To me, he was both teacher and father. Later, I went abroad for further studies, carving out a name for myself on Wall Street, becoming the mysterious enigma of Wall Street people talked about. When I finally achieved success and wanted to return and repay my mentor, he had already passed away in an unfortunate accident. I promised him I would look after you all. My voice was low. When the Sterling Group ran into trouble this time, I initially wanted to just inject capital directly. But your grandfather, your dad's father, is a man of immense pride. He wouldn't agree to accept my help for no reason. So, you propose a marriage alliance? Kate's voice trembled, her understanding now complete. I nodded. It was the only way for him to accept my money without hurting his dignity. The truth was laid bare. It turned out that this marriage, which she had seen as filled with humiliation and calculation, was from beginning to end simply a man clumsily and silently fulfilling a promise to his mentor. He wasn't after the Sterling family's money, nor was he trying to humiliate her. He just wanted to protect her. Tears welled in Kate's eyes, flowing without warning. In that moment, all of Kate's defenses completely crumbled. She had always believed she was the victim in this transaction, a pawn manipulated by fate. Yet, in the end, she was the one who had been best protected. And she, in turn, had hurt the person silently guarding her, time and again, with the coldest attitude and the most wounding words. Guilt, gratitude, regret. A flood of complex emotions washed over her. And in the deepest currents of those emotions, a spark of attraction that she hadn't even noticed before began to grow. That night, she cooked a table full of dishes, though most of them were burnt. During dinner, she kept her head down, not daring to look at me. I didn't call her out, simply ate all of her dark cuisine clean. Late that night, I was about to head back to the guest room. Knock, knock. My door was softly tapped. I opened it to find Kate standing there in a silk nightgown, holding a glass of milk. Her face was flushed, her eyes darting away, unable to meet mine. A glass of milk before bed helps with sleep, she murmured, handing me the glass, her voice barely a whisper. I took the milk, but didn't make a move to let her go. Something else. I watched her composed. She fidgeted with the hem of her nightgown, hesitating for a long time. Finally, as if making a monumental decision, she looked up, meeting my gaze, and whispered, "Ethan, can we start over?" Her eyes shimmered, filled with anticipation and a barely perceptible hint of vulnerability. I paused and smiled. I leaned against the doorframe, idly swirling the milk in the glass, mirroring her cold, sarcastic tone from our wedding night. "Oh, start over." I mimicked her original words, asking each one distinctly, "Didn't you say you'd get my body, but never my heart?" Kate's face instantly flushed crimson, all the way down to her neck. The tables had truly turned. From that day on, our roles seemed to completely reverse. She began clumsily, earnestly, trying to enter my world. She'd wake up early, intending to help me with breakfast, and almost set the kitchen on fire. She tried to learn how to cook, poring over recipes for ages, only to produce dishes that were still barely edible. But her eyes would be full of such hope that I couldn't bear to criticize her. She tried to learn my preferences, buy me things I'd never use, like a fishing rod. I don't fish, or fancy tea. I only drink water. Watching her fumbling, repeatedly failing yet always trying again, often made me chuckle and feel a warmth in my chest. That high and mighty Ice Queen CEO, in front of me, had transformed into an awkward, somewhat silly girl next door, experiencing her first crush. Meanwhile, within the Sterling Group, things were far from peaceful. Although the Ascendant Holdings crisis was resolved, some old guard executives, feeling entitled due to their long service, chafed under Kate's leadership as a young CEO. They banded together, constantly trying to trip her up and undermine her authority. Kate was distraught, several times on the verge of asking for my help. But this time I refused. Your father, my mentor, his greatest wish was for you to become a self-sufficient, true entrepreneur, not a hothouse flower needing shelter. I told her this in my study while steeping tea. This time, I won't directly intervene. But if you're willing, I can teach you what to do. Kate looked at me, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, which quickly hardened into determination. Okay, I'll learn. So over the next month, my role shifted from house husband to business mentor. I taught her how to analyze financial reports, how to read people, how to forge alliances, and how to achieve the greatest results with the least cost. I held nothing back, teaching her everything I had learned over 15 years in the cutthroat world of Wall Street, bit by bit. She learned quickly, displaying a remarkable talent. She grew more confident, more decisive, and the fierce glow of a true leader rekindled in her eyes. A month later, at the Sterling Group's annual shareholder meeting, facing the combined assault of the old guard, Kate showed no sign of panic. She was thoroughly prepared, her logic crystal clear. With an irrefutable data report and a sweeping reform plan, she dismantled their schemes one by one. seizing back their power and completely taking control of the entire company. When she stood on stage and declared the meeting adjourned, sustained applause erupted from the audience. In that moment, she was radiant. I knew then that my mentor could finally rest in peace. At the celebration banquet after the shareholder meeting, Kate was the center of attention. She moved through the crowd effortlessly, confident and poised in a sharp white suit. Everyone looked at her with admiration and respect. I didn't disturb her, content to sit alone in a corner, quietly sipping my drink, enjoying her moment in the spotlight. The banquet ended, and we returned home late. As usual, I was sitting on the living room sofa, scrolling through financial news on my tablet. A delicate scent wafted over as Kate gently hugged me from behind. Her face was pressed against my back, warm with a hint of wine-induced mellowness. "Ethan," she whispered my name, soft and low. The prenup. Can we tear it up?" I turned off my tablet and rotated to face her. She stood before me, her cheeks flushed from the wine, her eyes hazy, like a perfectly ripe peach. I reached out and cupped her chin, recreating that classic scene from our wedding night. Only this time, my eyes held no trace of cockiness or teasing, but were full of warmth and a tender smile. "What is it?" I whispered. "Do you want my heart now?" Her face turned even redder, her long lashes fluttering like a butterfly's wings. She didn't speak. Instead, she closed her eyes, stood on tiptoe, and answered my question with a kiss, shy yet fervent. After a long moment, our lips parted. I rested my forehead against hers, looking into her shimmering eyes, and smiled. "Well, that depends on your performance." Outside, the moonlight was perfect. Our story had only just begun. End.